Hi, welcome to the video. A couple weeks ago, I did a review on Dehancer Pro, which is a film emulation plugin for video. So if you haven't seen that before, I'll link it somewhere over here. I've been using that plugin to color grade every single video that I've posted since then. So yeah, I've just been using it a lot. That also got me curious about how I'd be able to use their film emulation plugin for photo called Dehancer Film. Initially, I didn't show much interest in the photo plugin just because I felt like I already had a workflow and a certain way that I edit my photos in Lightroom Classic. But at the same time, I knew I was kind of going through a stylistic change and transition in my work. So I wanted to see if this could aid me in any way, so I ended up reaching out to Dehancer, and they graciously offered me a license to the plugin in exchange for me making this video. Dehancer has no say in this video, and they're not paying me, but they are offering me a full license to the plugin. I realized I could have probably chosen some old photos to edit, but I decided to just come into the city a bit early to get a few shots because I am filming another video today. So yeah, let's go shoot, and we'll pick some photos to edit. Also, I'm like vlogging in public in New York, which is terrifying. So please like and subscribe because this is really pushing myself out of my comfort zone. So Alright, so I'm back home, and before we get into Dehancer, I want to talk about kind of the day that I shot. The conditions were obviously super overcast and had just rained before I started shooting, so the photos that I got weren't necessarily very dynamic in light and color. I did choose two photos that I'm going to edit from that day, but I also want to show you two photos that I shot earlier in the month that have different lighting conditions, just so I can give you a better idea of the different looks that you can achieve. Also, I want to mention that this plugin is compatible not only with Lightroom Classic, but also Photoshop, Capture One, and Affinity. So if you don't use Lightroom, I'm pretty sure that the plugin is the exact same for the other programs. Okay, let's jump into the editing. So once you have your photos in your Lightroom catalog, the first thing I like to do before I actually take the photo into the plugin is make a few basic adjustments. The first thing I'll do is I'll go to my lens correction section and I'm gonna remove chromatic aberration. And then I'll go up to my basic adjustments. If your photo is really underexposed or overexposed, I'd recommend making those basic adjustments before you take the photo into the plugin. You'll notice that you can't tweak things like your curves, your highlights, and your shadows. So I think it's best to kind of get those to your liking first before you start working in the plugin. So for this one, I'm just gonna bring up the exposure a little bit. I'm gonna bring up the contrast. My highlights I'm gonna drop a little bit, but I'm gonna bring my shadows up so we can more clearly see that silhouetted person inside the subway station, and then bring up the whites a little bit, bring up dehaze a bit, and I think that is a good base to start with and take into the plugin. These are the adjustments I made, and now this photo is ready to be taken into the plugin. What you can do is right click on your photo, go down to edit in, and edit in Dehancer Lightroom plugin. Click that. These are the settings that you kind of want to go with. This is what I go with. Make sure you're editing a copy with Lightroom adjustments. Your bit depth should be at 16 bits, and your resolution can stay at 240. If you want to go to 300, that's totally up to you. And now we can click edit. I already worked on this image, but we're gonna reset it and we're gonna edit it all together. So if you wanna reset an entire image, you just go over here and you're gonna click reset all settings to default. So the first thing is let's go over to our film profile section. That's at the top left here. We're gonna make sure we enable that. And now you can just kind of go through and choose whatever we think looks good. And I've already favorited a few looks that I love, and I've been using the Ektachrome look a lot. So I think We're also gonna roll with that on this one. Let me just look through a few others to see if they would fit. And this is all obviously personal preference, but I think I'm gonna stick with the Ektachrome. If you wanna see a before and after, all you have to do is click this box next to preview and it'll show you your base image and the adjustments that you made. So first, we're gonna go to our source. This is where you can change exposure, temperature, and tint. I think for this, I'm gonna brighten up my exposure just a little bit. I want to kind of cool my image just a tad. And for the tint, I think we'll bring it into the magenta. But now that I think of it, I think I'm gonna make it a little bit warmer. So we're good with the source section. Let's go down to Film Developer and make sure we click the box to enable the adjustments. Now for this, you can obviously see contrast boost, gamma correction, color separation, and color boost. Some of these terms seem a little bit redundant throughout the sections, so I kind of just play with the slider and see what it does to the image, and if it looks the same in a different section, I probably won't touch it. So for the contrast boost, obviously contrast, I'm going to push it up just a little bit. I don't want to overdo it. Gamma correction doesn't look like it does too much, honestly, so you can go over here and just undo. Color separation is set to 100, and obviously it doesn't really do much either, so I'm going to undo that. Color boost seems like a saturation slider almost. If you push that all the way up to 100, yeah, it brings out all the color, so I don't want to do that. It looks a little too much, but I'm going to boost it just a little bit. All right, so we're done with our film developer section. We're going to come down to film compression, and we're going to make sure we check it. And now we have impact, white point, tonal range, and color density. So again, these might feel a little bit redundant, but we're just going to slide them and see what they do. I kind of like dropping the impact just a bit down. For the white point, I'm just going to kind of slide it under where it was. Tonal range is set to 30 by default, and I like the way it looks, so I'm just going to keep it. And color density almost, is it not the same thing as color boost? I guess it's slightly different, but if you play around with it, you'll notice that it doesn't do much, so I'm just going to keep it to how it was. All right, we're going to close the film compression, and we're going to go down to expand. This is where you see three options, black point and white point, and then your color mode. I just keep my color mode as normal, and then your black point. For this image, I think it works best to kind of keep it where it was. And white point, oh wow, okay, so that does a lot, but we're gonna undo it. I already like how this image looks, so I don't want to make those adjustments. So now we're gonna go down to print, and by default, it is set to Kodak Endura Glossy Paper. I'm just gonna leave it. Obviously, however much time you have, you can play around with all the settings, but for the most part, I already like the way this image looks, so I don't want to tweak exposure anymore again, or, you know, my contrast, because I already did that. So we're gonna leave it how it is. We're not gonna play around with this much. And we're gonna go down to color head, and this is my favorite section of the plugin to use. So we're gonna make sure we click that, and now we can play around with the tones in our images. So I think for this one, I'm gonna slightly shift it towards the blue. I'm gonna bring it a little bit into the green and slightly a little bit into the red. So now we're gonna come down to our shadows, midtones, and highlights. And this is the one that I probably tweaked the most out of all the adjustments. For our shadows, I'm gonna bring them up pretty warm. I wanna keep the midtones a little bit cool. And our highlights, I love cranking them. Okay, I don't love cranking them, but I definitely like a significant change. And I'm gonna kind of hover around 40. And that's it for our color head section. You can still preserve exposure, which doesn't do a ton. And then impact, which is, yeah, I don't know. Some of these things don't do a lot for me, but we're gonna close that and we're gonna go down to our film grain. Pretty self-explanatory, just adding film grain to the image. Make sure we check that, open it up, and the first thing we see is size. Size doesn't matter though, so we're just gonna kind of, you know, we're gonna stick to very little size. And then for the amount, I'm gonna drop this to about 11. Resolution will drop to about 25, and I'm not gonna even bother playing around with the shadows, midtones, highlights. Like I said, if you have the time and you wanna do it, be my guest. I'm not gonna worry about halation just because this shot was primarily lit by, you know, natural light, and I only really use halation if I am editing a night shot or a subway shot where there is ambient fluorescent light. And same thing with bloom. I typically only use bloom if I'm editing a photo that was shot in really sunny conditions. As far as vignette goes, I'm not a huge fan of bringing it into the image, so I'm just going to undo. I'm going to make sure that's unchecked. And this is what we get. If you want to zoom in on any part of the image, you could just click this one by one. It'll zoom in, you can kind of look around, but we're good there. So when you're done with your photo, you're going to click OK in the top right. And what that's going to do is open up a second copy in Lightroom as a TIFF file with the adjustments that you just made. You can make any further adjustments on this file as well, but I prefer to kind of have it all done in the plugin, and if I need to do any minor tweaks to saturation, or colors, then I will do it. So this is another photo that I shot on that same day, and I'm not going to take you through how I edited it, just because I feel like you really have to see the plugin for yourself and use it and make the tweaks that you like. But I went with a black and white edit on this. I thought the colors weren't necessarily very prominent in the photo, so that is enough for me to take away the color and just make it a black and white image. I went with the Ilford XP2 Super 400 profile, and I think it came out really nice. And here is the before, and here is the after. Here are two more photos that I shot earlier this month that I chose to edit just because they had different lighting conditions than the, overcast shots that I got the other day. I just kind of like how many profiles there are within the plugin itself to be able to kind of nail down your, desired film look. And I love how these turned out. They were edited entirely in the plugin. So yeah, overall, I really like this plugin, and I think it's super helpful to achieve the film look when you don't really want to spend the money on actually shooting film, because trust me, it can be a very expensive, slippery slope. However, I definitely recommend that you do shoot film at some point. Film is a whole different world compared to digital, where I think you do learn to appreciate the process and test out different stocks and make mistakes, but also be rewarded at the same time. And some people might say that this plugin is cheating, but whatever, like call me a cheater. I think that people try to emulate the film look in their digital photos a lot, and this plugin just makes it easy, and it's super helpful and fun to play around with. However, with all the good things about the plugin, there are some things that I don't love. First and foremost, if you're a beginner photographer, I would advise you to learn how to edit your images before you even consider using this plugin. Editing is a crucial part to the photography process, and it's something that I love doing. But I don't think that a beginner photographer should be jumping into this plugin straight away. I think you should have the general knowledge of what, exposure, contrast, tone curves, clarity, hue, saturation, and luminance all do to an image before you jump into a plugin and kind of have it take over and almost do the work for you. Some of the things I'd like to see implemented in the plugin would be keyboard shortcuts. For example, Command plus to zoom in. Right now, I think there's only two ways of viewing your image in the plugin, and that's the image itself in its entirety, and then the one of one, which is like the Dehancer default. I'd love to be able to have like a custom zoom to, kind of decide how I want to look at a certain part of the photo. I also would love to see a Command Z, which is to, undo and edit, because I think in the beginning you're going to be testing out a lot of the, features and effects, and to have to kind of move your mouse all the way across the screen to undo and edit is a bit annoying, and I think it could be a bit more efficient, but maybe that's just me nitpicking. I also think the sliders are a bit choppy when it comes to seeing the adjustments in the image itself, so I'd like to see those be a bit more responsive as you make the adjustments. I've been really pleased with the results that I've been able to get on my images. And I can't say that I'm going to use this on every photo I take, but if I am in an editing or creative block, I definitely will use the plugin to kind of help open my eyes as to what my images could potentially look like. If you're interested in getting the plugin for yourself, you can sign up for a free trial, and if you decide you like it and want to purchase it, you can use my code to save yourself 10% off, and you'd also be supporting me in the process. So if you do, I really appreciate it. And that's it. Let me know what you guys think about the plugin and if it's something that you can see yourself using in the future. Also, feel free to check out the review I did for Dehancer Pro, which is the video version of this plugin. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I will catch you in the next one.